Picture this. You're chilling in the Carboniferous period. Everything is humid and soupy. And suddenly these scaly weirdos start showing up with a superpower nobody expected. They brought eggs. Not just any eggs, though. Eggs with their own built-in survival pods. While amphibians were still tied to water like they had an invisible leash, reptiles just walked away from the shoreline and never looked back. Bro really said, "I'm good," and claimed the entire land as their empire. But here's where it gets spicy. The normal world wasn't actually that normal. Earth was going through its goth phase, with supercontinents smashing together like a geological mosh pit, creating Pangaea. Climate zones were getting extreme, deserts were expanding, and suddenly being able to lay eggs on dry land wasn't just convenient, it was the ultimate flex. Amphibians needed ponds and lakes to reproduce, but reptiles packed lunch and went wherever they wanted. They were the first true landlords of the terrestrial world, and they weren't paying rent to anyone. Then the catalyst hit. A series of volcanic eruptions kicked off a cascade that would reshape life forever. CO2 levels spiked, temperatures went haywire, and ecosystems started collapsing like a poorly built Jenga tower. For most creatures, this was game over, but reptiles, they thrived. Their scaly skin was basically organic armor against water loss, which meant they could survive in places that would turn other animals into jerky. They had cracked the code. Low metabolism, efficient kidneys, eggs that didn't need babysitting. Reptiles were built different, and the planet rewarded them for it. Now let's talk about the meat of this story, the cause and effect chain that turned reptiles from niche weirdos into planetary dominators. First, their eggs had amniotic membranes, which is a fancy way of saying each baby got its own personal swimming pool wrapped in a shell. No need to trek back to water. Second, their skin wasn't just protective, it was a moisture vault. Compared to amphibians who basically leaked water like a broken faucet, reptiles were sealed tight. Third, they could regulate their body temperature by just chilling in the sun or hiding in shade. No expensive internal heating system required. They were energy efficient before it was cool. And this is where the comparative analysis gets fun. Think of a modern crocodile. That thing is a living fossil, a design so good that evolution looked at it and said, yeah, we're keeping this. Crocodiles today are basically the same as their ancestors from 200 million years ago because the blueprint was already perfect. Compare that to something like a salamander, which still needs to stay moist and near water, and you see how reptiles unlocked hard mode and still dominated. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The very disasters that killed off other lineages were actually power-ups for reptiles. When the Permian extinction rolled through and deleted 90% of all species, reptiles didn't just survive, they inherited the earth. Suddenly, there were open niches everywhere, empty real estate, just waiting for new tenants. And reptiles moved in with a vengeance. They split into multiple evolutionary branches. Some became the ancestors of mammals. Others turned into dinosaurs, which would go on to run the planet for 160 million years like an undefeated dynasty. Another group became the archosaurs, giving us crocodiles and birds. Reptiles weren't just surviving, they were diversifying into every possible ecological role. The speculation here gets wild too. What if reptiles had never developed that amniotic egg? We'd probably still be stuck with amphibian overlords, and you'd need a pond in your backyard just to exist. What if they hadn't been able to handle those volcanic eruptions and climate swings? Mammals might never have gotten their shot. But reptiles rolled the dice and came up winners every single time. And here's the visual logic that makes this story click. People always ask, why didn't reptiles go back to the ocean more? Why weren't there more aquatic dinosaurs? The answer is simple. They didn't need to. The ocean was already packed with competition, and the land was wide open. Why fight for scraps underwater when you could rule continents? It's the same reason you do unsee humans trying to colonize the Mariana Trench when there's perfectly good real estate on the surface. The pacing of reptile evolution is relentless. From their humble origins as small lizard-like creatures to becoming the ancestors of the largest land animals ever, the story never stops escalating. Every chapter introduces a new challenge, and reptiles just adapt, overcome, and dominate. They're the protagonists in a hero's journey that spans eras, fighting against volcanic apocalypses, climate chaos, and mass extinctions, and somehow they keep winning. The conclusion ties everything together beautifully. Look around you right now. Birds. Those are reptiles. Crocodiles, snakes, lizards, turtles. All reptiles. They didn't just survive the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. They regrouped and kept going. The legacy of that first scaly creature that laid an egg on dry land echoes through every ecosystem on Earth today. Reptiles didn't just write history, they became it. History really does bite back, and it's got scales.